Hi, I'm Rachel Brezel, a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm excited to talk to you today about the upcoming Yontif and what we can do to enhance the beauty of it and minimize the challenges. So if you're someone that breezes through Yontif typically and you love being around family and having the house full with your family and it's such a positive experience for you, then you're good to go. And you may like to listen to some ideas that I'm sharing, but this is for many of us, certainly myself, that there are a lot of challenges over Yontif and there's so much beauty. And that's why we're having this conversation to figure out how to minimize those challenges. So the first thing we need to understand is, why is it that Yontif comes with challenges? Because understanding that helps us with step 2 on how to prepare for it. So if you think a moment about it, there's the emotional component and like the physical component. Emotionally, if our home is filled with our children who are not in school, or our entire, let's say we're an adolescent or a young adult at home, then our house is much fuller. Sometimes even married and nieces and nephews and a lot of grandchildren are in the home. And the house gets very full physically and emotionally. And we lose a lot of our privacy and our personal space. And we're also much more exposed. We feel more vulnerable because everything we say and do there's an audience, and a large audience. And we feel judged, and we judge ourselves, and we feel others are judging us, and we judge others, and sometimes that is true, and sometimes that isn't, and it's probably a combination of the two. And we feel very vulnerable in that space. Additionally, let's say we don't have a full house, but on the other hand, we're a couple that our children didn't come for the holidays, and it's just the two of us. Or we're an older single, or somebody that's spending Yontif alone. Somehow the loneliness that we experience during Yontif is more acute. It's more pronounced because we're thinking how everybody else has people in their home for Yontif, and we believe Yontif is synonymous with family, which very often it is, and we're missing out on that. Another thing that happens emotionally is there's a lot of compare, and we know that compare is despair. Comparison takes the joy out of our life. So there's a lot of compare going on. We're comparing our family to other families that we believe are doing it better or doing it right, and we're doing it all wrong. Or we're comparing our spouse to someone else's spouse who's helping so much more. So there's a lot of different emotions that are charged at this time. And if you or a loved one is an individual that's struggling with some mental health struggle, challenge, it's usually more triggered, more pronounced at this time during the holidays. And that is the time to reach out for help beforehand. And that's what we're going to discuss very soon. So those are some of the emotional stuff that goes on during Yontif for many of us. And then there's the whole absence of routine and distractions over Yontif, whether it's work, going to the gym, going out for coffee with a friend, going on, errands, or it's some of us are very connected to our phones and texting and WhatsApp and social media and all our gadgets, and we don't have that either. So if we think about all the things that are absent or all the things that we're up against over Yontif, it makes sense that we should have challenges. Understanding that awareness is the first step of helping ourselves, because then when we have the awareness that these challenges come up, we can know that we now need to fortify, enhance all our nourishment for our mind and body. And that's what this conversation is about. To have this proactive, intentional mindset of doing something before and during Yontif to minimize the challenges, which will automatically enhance the beauty. The way I see it is I think of it as a four-pronged approach. And just so you know, even though I'm going to share the 4 parts and several strategies under each part, it's for the individual to choose what works for them. It doesn't mean you need to do all these things, for sure not. You just pick and choose what works, or tweak or modify any of these suggestions and see if it helps you out. So the 4 parts I'd like to discuss today are the emotional and physical, spiritual, and relational. And we're going to put a few little techniques, ideas under each one, and then it'll be up to you to fly with them. Okay, so let's think about the emotional. We spoke about what's absent, what we're struggling with emotionally over the holidays and when our house is full or our house is very empty. What could we do for that? So what I like to think about, number 1, is to lower my expectations. I like to lower my expectations of myself, the way I need to show up. Lower my expectations of what Yontif needs to look like. How perfect does it need to look? Whether it's the table, the food, the clothing, the children. My expectations of others, because I want to keep in mind that everyone is struggling with the same emotional and absence of routine struggles that I am. Because if we don't lower our expectations, we're setting ourselves up for failure, because Yontif is not perfect. It's not supposed to be. So that's one thing I'd like to do to help myself emotionally. Another thing I like to do is I think about 1 or 2 people in my family that are triggering for me. And when I do that, before I step out of bed in the morning, I want to verbalize out loud, I admire this about this person. And I say it out loud. And I try to find 2 to 5 things that I admire, respect, or love about them. And I stick to 1 or 2 people. If you want to do more, of course you can. Another thing I like to do before I get out of bed in the morning is I'll say something like, I have the power to bring joy and peace into my life today for myself. So again, something like, I have the power to bring peace and joy to myself today. Notice how I said to myself. And that's a very important component of this sentence, because to myself means that I am not controlling others or the environment. I am doing something that I have control over. Of course, you don't need to use that statement. But if you can make up a mantra for yourself that you say every morning before you get out of bed, that may empower you. And having those few things that you admire, respect about the triggering people, so when they do trigger you, there'll be like this buffer to help you with that. Add to that lowering expectations, and emotionally, you're much more fortified. If you or a loved one are struggling with a mental health challenge, this would be the time to speak to your support group, whether it's your therapist, mentor, spiritual leader, and get yourself a plan. What am I going to do when I'm triggered? Or what can I do to minimize my triggers? Because that would be a very important thing for you to do so that you are more fortified for Yontif. Let's go to the next step. Physically, we don't have our gadgets, and we don't have work, and we don't have the gym. What can we do? Well, proactively, we need to replace that. So let's think about it. Just some ideas. Excellent books, magazines, adult games, children games, scheduled play dates for the young ones, coffee dates for us, walking partners. Another important thing to put in there is to remember that Maslow's hierarchy. What is the most foundational piece that you need to know? What does a person need? What are the human needs? Well, we need, number 1, sleep, water. We need to be hydrated, so we need rest and hydration, food, and movement. Keep that in mind for you and your loved ones. We do not operate manually. We do not function optimally if we don't have those basic needs. And if we keep that in mind, it'll help move us forward if we keep focusing on that to make sure, did I sleep? Did he sleep? Did she sleep? maybe we need to get a little more sleep in. Or did I drink enough water? Am I doing enough movement? Usually we did enough with the food most often, hopefully. Something else you can do is, maybe set yourself up for a little challenge in this area. You could do it with a family member or a friend, and you could say, okay, so if I drink 3 to 4 cups of water typically on a day, on the holidays, when things are more stressed, I'm going to drink 6 cups. Or you can say, I'm going to get more movement in. I typically walk out for 5 minutes a day. Well, I'm going to walk outside briskly for 3 times 5 minutes a day. And you could do that with a friend or have a challenge. You don't have to do it together necessarily. Or yes, do it together. Have a walking partner if that works for you. Or put in dancing into your day. Dance yourself. Dance with family members. Run up and down the steps 5 to 10 times. So you know you're getting your movement in. So again, we have the Maslow's hierarchy to make sure that we're well rested, hydrated, fed, and we have movement. We're building in challenges, and we're making sure that we have the magazines, the books, the games, the play dates, the coffee dates. And what I like to do the most is I prepare my favorite foods and snacks. So I have those as go-tos also. So you may want to try that if it talks to you. Okay, let's go to the third way we could fortify ourselves on Yontif. Spiritually, if this works for you, if it talks to you, and you want to lean into this, then connect to God, connect to Hashem in a more powerful way. This is Yontif. Connect to the meaning of Yontif. Take pride and pleasure in everything Yontif has to offer. Do a little extra prayer, a little extra Tehillim, if that works for you. Before you get out of bed in the morning, talk to Hashem. 1 sentence. God, help me stay calm through the chaos. Please, God, help me stay calm through the chaos. Those words may make you feel fortified and strong to manage the day. Another thing you could do is just stay present. When you're taking a walk outside, talk to Hashem. So that's if you want to work on the spiritual piece. And now, my favorite is the relationship piece. What you could do with the relationship piece. So I could go on forever talking to you about the relationship piece, but I'm just going to give you like 3 or 4 ideas, and you could fly with them, modify them, or better yet, brainstorm by yourself or with a loved one or a friend about other ways that you could enhance relationships over Yontif, because that's really what it's all about, right? So one thing you could do for relationships is you could ask for a do-over. And a do-over looks something like this. If you get upset with someone, or you speak in a way that you're not so proud of, or you see it bother the other person, or you were yelling or something, you could say, hey, can I have a do-over? I do this a lot, and it's a little playful, and it also it's another way of saying I'm sorry, and it usually does a reset so beautifully. Most often, they say, of course. I even do a twist on do-over that I made up, that I'm very proud of, because it does work, but it doesn't always, it could backfire. But what I do is, when someone hurts me by what they said or did, then I'll say, ouch. And I'll say, could we have a do-over? I was hoping you would say this. Could we do that whole thing over? I'll ask it to you again, and you'll respond in a way that works better for me. And usually they're on board. And it just brings a little humor into the relationship, and the tension sort of dissipates. Another idea that I have is I try my best to stay away from words that are absolute. This is not easy for me, because I usually speak a lot in absolutes, and this is something I'm working on, and I invite you to join me. To try to stay away from, you never do that. You always do that. You always say those horrible things to me. You never help me with the children. those words don't make things better. They actually make the other person go on the defensive. Another word that I try to stay away from, and I also ask my family members to stay away from, is calm down or please calm down. I don't know about you, but when someone tells me to calm down, in my dictionary, when I open the dictionary, next to calm down, it says, you're out of control, pull your life together. It doesn't feel very good. And you know what else? It doesn't make me calm down. So rather, I would say to the person when I'd like them to calm down, I would say, something seems to be bothering you. How could I help you with that? Or something like that. It's a lot better than calm down, and you will usually get a better response than if you just said calm down. The other idea for relationship is what I shared with you before about the people that trigger you. To think of something in your mind that you admire, respect, or love about them, and keep it in the forefront of your mind as a buffer. And of course, there are so many more, but we'll stop there for relationships. I'll just check if I had any others that I wanted to share with you over there. Oh, one more. Okay, I'm happy. I checked. So there's, when you're in conflict with somebody, to resolve that conflict, you do need to calm down, and the other person needs to calm down. Therefore, you have to say, ask yourself, am I in a reactive or receptive state right now? If I'm in a reactive state, that's not the time to try to resolve a conflict. Just as important, you have to ask yourself if the other person is in a reactive or receptive state. Because if they're not in a receptive state, that's also not the time to resolve a conflict. The two of you need to be receptive and not reactive. So, for instance, let's play this out. Let's model this. Someone really aggravates you. You really want to let them have it because you really feel they did an injustice. Instead of reacting or trying to work it out with them when you're really upset, I need a few minutes. I need to take a break from this so we can discuss it later. I am not in the right frame of mind to discuss what just happened right now. So I need an hour, or I need 20 minutes, or maybe this evening we could talk about it, but this bothered me and I want to talk to you about it later when I'm in the right frame of mind. Okay, so I just want to leave you with a few little points in closing. One is that when we mess up, that is synonymous with being human, and we need to embrace that because we will mess up. Because if we're human, which I believe we all are, we're going to mess up, Oviantif. And we need to embrace that and say, hey, I'm human. And don't do what so many of us do. Like, you know, the typical analogy of the Bentley, one of the tires blew out, and are you going to go and slash the other three? Please, guys, when you mess up, embrace it. Acknowledge that you're human. But don't slash the other three tires. Don't throw away the entire yantif. It could still be beautiful. Contain it. Put it on the shelf for now. Journal about it if you're able to at that time in the holiday. Talk to a friend about it. Say we'll talk about it later. Do some sort of repair, and move on. Don't let it destroy your yantif because you were human. Another thought that I want to leave you with is, keep in mind all your successes over yantif. No matter how tiny they are, keep them in mind because they're going to give you the fuel to move forward when you do mess up. Acknowledge your successes. And it's important to lean into your strengths over yantif. The holidays is not the time to work on your weaknesses, okay? Leave that for after or before. During the holidays, when there's usually more challenges, that's the time to lean into your strengths. So if you're great with relationships, work on your relationships so that they could propel you forward during the challenges, during the challenging moments. And, fortify those. Strengthen your relationships. Lean into that. If you're great spiritually, lean into that. Emotionally, lean into that. Whatever it is that works for you, make it stronger. So we're working on optimizing our strengths and letting our weaknesses be carried through our strengths. And then we can work on our weaknesses again after the holiday with our support team or on our own. I hope that was helpful. And again, a great idea to do if you can, either by yourself or with loved ones. Sit down and brainstorm yourselves how you could enhance the beauty of Yontif and minimize your personal challenges. And I wish you the best of luck and a beautiful holiday wherever you're spending it and with whom you're spending it. Thank you for listening.